Welcome back to Logan EB's Scout Room, and today I have a film breakdown on Braylon Mullins' game against DePaul. He played yesterday. That would be the 10th. I think this is the best game he's played all season. I've been pretty high on Mullins coming into the season. Since he was in high school, he would have been a top 10 recruit of mine for this high school class had I done a class ranking. And I've just been generally excited for him to come back from this injury he sustained in the summer and start playing. And I think so far he started off to a little bit of a slower start than I would have wanted him to, but I think he's really starting to turn the corner. He had 26 points the other day against Xavier. That was a game he just got red hot from three, and that's what's so special about Mullins, is what we'll get into, is the 3-point shot is just ridiculous with this kid. But I think this game against DePaul was probably the best one he put on tape, just in terms of the overall game. The usage wasn't exactly there in terms of the highest end outcomes, but from someone of his connective movement shooter archetype, that's not necessarily what I would want from him. So I'm gonna show you guys why I thought this game was so good. But first, before we get into it, I do want to do a little bit of a background on him, and as well, I think what makes him different than a lot of these movement shooters of this archetype. First, courtesy to Nile, shout out Nile Hoops. Go ahead and give him a follow over on Twitter if you haven't already. This is his pre-NCAA box score database. If you look at Mullins in high school, this is really the kicker for me. He shot 555 threes across 98 games. That is a ridiculous rate of 6 threes per game, as you can see here. And he shot them on 44%. He was also 84% from the line on almost 500 free throws. This kid is just ridiculous touch. When you're 71% true shooting in high school, I know he went to Greenville Central in Indiana, which is a public school. It's still Indiana high school basketball. It's still pretty solid high school basketball, especially on that public school side. While it might not be to the level of a state like California, which probably has the best state high school basketball. A lot of those tend to be Catholic schools as well, as opposed to Mullins' Greenfield Central. Excuse me. When you're just this wildly efficient, I think at some point we have to take note. I think the more encouraging part of his game, as opposed to a lot of these other shooter types, is the fact that he was 69% from two on over 752 point attempts. To me, and this came out when you watched his tape as well, kind of just got to the rim when he wanted to in high school, and particularly showed a level of touch in the mid-range that was really impressive. It reminds me of players like J.J. Redick, Ray Allen, these other movement shooter types who kind of had the more positive outcomes, as opposed to some other guys we might get into that could keep people away from Mullins. And that's the ability to efficiently score in the mid-range when you get ran off of your line in the NBA. If you look at someone like Jordan Hawkins, who is frequently getting run off of his line in the NBA and was also a product of this Dan Hurley UConn system, he hasn't been efficient enough, one from three to be entirely honest in Hawkins' case, but in the mid-range as well, to be an efficient player. Because obviously when you're an incredible shooter and you're putting the 3-point shot in the hole at a rate at 40% or above, you don't have to return the exact same points per possession value in terms of finishing at the rim, or just in general 2-point scoring, as other player archetypes would, because your general points per possession on 3-point attempts is going to be that much higher than everybody else. So there's a certain baseline you have to hit, and I think Mullins is someone who's a real shot to hit that baseline as a mid-range scorer, to the point where getting run off and taking the 16-foot jumper is not a bad shot by any means. But it's also the fact that I think he's a really good finisher at the rim. I know he's got to the rim at an insane rate so far in his college season, and to be honest, that's something I would expect. I don't think this is going to be a very high rim attempt guy, as opposed to maybe someone like Cam Spencer, who is in this UConn system, and I think that's really important. I know AAU, the numbers, they go down a little bit. He's down to 56% from two. That's still really good. Free throw rates were never that good with this kid, but part of that's due to the shot diet. I think handling contact is something he can definitely improve, but I don't think it's bad by any means. But if we just look at his holistic sample, again, we have 140 games on record for Mullins. That is a huge sample across both AAU and high school basketball. It skews a little bit more towards the high school basketball sample. If you actually look in the AAU sample, the 3-point rate does go up quite a bit, significantly, and I think that's just him playing off the ball more. I've watched him more in AAU than I did in his high school games, and it was pretty clear he was adopting to a more off the ball role. He played in Indiana Elite with Malachi Moreno, where Moreno was a little bit of the hub of the offense. I think you can see it now with Moreno at Kentucky playing on the ball as a hub. I think they worked really well together and had some real synergy. I think it did show some real maturity of Mullins to choose UConn as a destination, a place that can play very similarly to the way he played at Indiana Elite. I always love when prospects tend to make that kind of almost one-to-one transition. But I think with Mullins, like, it's the fact that he rebounds, pretty well. It's the fact that he's a positive assist turnover ratio at both destinations, 1.3 total for the high school career, 2.3 steals per game over the junior sample. I know the number in AAU is quite a bit lower than it is in high school. I still think this is a kid who's really, really good defensive instincts. But when you have a 47% for three-point attempt rate on 855 total threes, and you're over not just 40%, you're 42, almost 43% from three. I think that's just something that we have to take note of, and we kind of have to mark you as you're probably going to at least hang around the NBA for a while. Even if Mullins never returns positive, like analytical contributor value, which I think he will, he's at least going to be in the league for probably like at least 8 years. Like, he's going to go through that rookie contract, and someone else is going to at least give him a second chance to prove himself. Maybe if it's not a fully guaranteed deal, or maybe it would be a fully guaranteed deal, but maybe it's not a multi-year deal. He's going to bounce from destination to destination. If you look at someone like, Garrison Matthews, who's another knockdown shooter, he's kind of just in and around the league. These guys get to hang around because they're such good shooters, and if you finally weaponize it in the correct spot, it tends to return a lot of value. So that was Mullins before high school. I would say coming into the year, I was expecting a lack of physicality. I think that is in some ways shown off, but I think the most exciting part about him is it's the defensive end. It's the fact that I think he has really good instincts and has always had really good instincts. And the fact that when he was playing high school basketball in Indiana, when he was a junior, he was already known as one of the best on-ball defenders in the entire state. He was already someone who had the rep to go in the game, lock you up, and just kind of sit and guard in a way that a lot of these other movement shooter archetypes don't. Like, Lee McNeely was never really able to sit and guard someone. Jordan Hawkins was never able to sit and guard someone in a meaningful way. I think Mullins really can. I think the tape we're going to watch is going to bear that out. If you just look at him this season, as opposed to a lot of these players of this similar archetype, if we just quickly breeze through, I have Mullins here, I have McNeely, Spencer, and Hawkins, so I would argue his three counterparts year to year on UConn in terms of that movement shooter plus role. I think the only one who doesn't really fulfill the plus role would be Hawkins, and I think you're seeing that out in the NBA. But even McNeely handled a lot more on the ball duties at UConn, partially due to it being a flawed roster than you would have expected. And then I also have Buddy Hield here as someone who I think kind of fits Mullins' archetype. If you just compare Mullins directly to Hawkins, who I think would be the most similar stylistic player in terms of that, like, relying more on the 2-point jumper scoring as opposed to getting all the way to the rim and like essentially a true movement shooter. I don't know if McNeely was necessarily that true movement shooter. He was when he was in high school. Once he got to UConn, I don't know if he had the top speed to really separate. I think you're seeing that now in the NBA as well. Just look at Hawkins' basic profile. Really low assist rate, really low turnover rate as well, but pretty disastrous, steal and block rates, and then was a very disastrous finisher at the rim on a heavily assisted diet. That's probably the reason in all reality that he is not bearing out success in the NBA. If you look at Mullins so far, much better finisher at the rim, albeit incredibly small sample size. Very, very small sample size as opposed to Hawkins. Hawkins took 89 shots over 37 games. Mullins has only played 11 games so far. It does only have 13 attempts, so if you on a per rate basis, that is less attempts per game at this point. But it's way less assisted. I think that's very notable, to be entirely honest. He has a significantly better steal rate and block rate as opposed to Jordan Hawkins, better assist rate. The turnover rate is not quite where I would want it to be at this point, but I think the passing flashes outweigh that of the passing stats themselves. I think the tape we're going to watch is going to bear that out as well. If you did McNeely, who I think would be the next most similar to Hawkins archetypally in this UConn system, he kind of just blows McNeely out of the water analytically. I do think a huge part of that is the fact that Liam McNeely did have, I would say, a severe outlier three-point shooting season, and then I think his two-point scoring was significantly hindered by the fact that he had to play more on-the-ball reps than he should have. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that I think Liam McNeely's process finishing at the rim was not all that good. Even if you just do this comparison, though, I could say the passing indicators are pretty similar, which is good when you consider that Mullins is playing off the ball as opposed to McNeely taking a lot of point guard reps once it kind of became clear that Aiden Mahaney was not going to be able to handle those reps for UConn last year. It was a flawed roster, unfortunately. Dan Hurley, we still believe in you and you're proving us wrong this year. It's a little bit of a worse rebounder than McNeely. I think one thing with McNeely that I always loved going back to when he was at Montverde was how good of a rebounder he was. But to me, the indicator here is just the finishing. And obviously he's getting to the rim at a much lower rate than McNeely was. But I think Mullins' finishing process is really, really impressive. The free throw rate with Mullins is pretty disastrous. Yeah, it was not very good in high school. I was not expecting this to be good. I think fouls is simply just not a part of his game. Now, if we go to Cam Spencer, who is kind of undoubtedly the best of these players in the NBA so far, Spencer did have a more versatile on the ball role for what it's worth. I will say I think Spencer probably played in the greatest offensive context that any college player has probably ever played in this 2024 UConn team. I think it's showing that Spencer was a huge part of that context. I think all of their players who were in that starting lineup are really good basketball players. When you talk about the fact that Tristan Newton is probably the worst NBA player of the bunch, if we're being realistic, because I think Caravan will probably get some more NBA run than Newton has at this point. I know he just signed a two-way with somebody else. I think it shows that this team was, kind of that special. Like, I know Steph Castle doesn't always appeal to people analytically. I think undoubtedly he has to go top 3 or 4 in a redraft at this point, just due to the fact that he is showing some like potential all-star, sub-all-star flashes. And I think he's starting to perform better analytically this year than he was as opposed to last year, which again, very, very normal for rookies. Not to pat myself on the back, I did have him at 2 that year. I did see the vision. But Spencer had a much more diversified portfolio in terms of play types, just due to the fact that he handled a bit more on the ball than you would expect. And it's simply because the offense flowed so well that when he was being run off of these screening actions, he was able to quickly flip the ball to teammates that were open. And I think that's the huge part of his assist rate that bears out. And he's always had pretty good assist rates. If you go back to when he was at Loyola, Maryland, actually operated as more of a on-ball guard as opposed to when he was at UConn and Rutgers, especially. But if you look at Spencer's shooting profile, I think it's another one that resembles Mullins in terms of efficient two-point scoring. Mullins is another guy who, again, as I've mentioned, can score efficiently from two-point range, and I think Spencer was one of these players as well. And the one thing with Spencer is the at-the-rim rate is much more assisted than Mullins is. And I think this is something that I do want to monitor all season, is particularly this UConn system, I think, severely boosts open rim attempts in terms of assisted looks, assisted layups, back cuts, stuff like that. I think it's what makes Dan Hurley such a great coach. I think that's the reality of why their offense is so efficient, is that when you have the 3-point space, they have the ability to just hammer you on the interior and get efficient looks at the rim. I think that's what made last year's team different, is they didn't always have the 3-point spacing to hammer in at the rim, nor do they have people who can get to the rim reliably in terms of self-creation. I think that's why Silas DeMary has made such a big difference for this UConn team this year. I think McNeely's profile kind of lies in between Hawkins and Spencer's a little bit, with the added caveat that I think he's 2 inches taller than Spencer, if not more than that. Probably more athletic than Cam Spencer, if we're being entirely honest. I think Cam Spencer has kind of defied all odds just in terms of athletic profile and success in the NBA this year. And I think he actually might be a better shooter than Cam Spencer. And I think that's kind of wild to say. If you look at Cam Spencer, he shot 42% from 3 on 659 total threes. Like, I would put Mullins at that level of shooter. He's shooting 38% from 3 last year, or at this point this year. I think that will probably go up, which is kind of ridiculous to say. I think he's definitely a better shooter than Jordan Hawkins was. Definitely a better shooter than Lee McNeely was. And I think that's kind of what makes him exciting. So if we do Buddy Hield as well, this is actually, to me, one of the most similar comps in terms of just everything. One last thing I forgot to mention about Spencer. Spencer's the only one who also posted a good steal rate as opposed to Mullins. So 2.6 as opposed to Spencer's 2.7. While he was at UConn, it was boosted at Rutgers, boosted at elementary school. Rutgers defensive scheme, I'd assume, in some capacity, boosted Cam Spencer. I remember watching him that year when he was at Rutgers, and I thought he was a pretty solid defender. I always thought Cam Spencer was a pretty solid defender in terms of his technique, which I would say the same thing about Mullins. And Mullins, to me, is more athletic, as I mentioned. Back to Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield took a significantly more on-the-ball usage than any of these players, like only 70% assisted from 3, almost entirely unassisted along mid-range diet, which was pretty inefficient, and then very, very unassisted at the rim. Again, Buddy Hield was one of the 5 best players in the country, probably, when he was a senior. The difference with Buddy and Mullins is, you look at it profile-wise, pretty similar. Just if you look at all the percentages, Mullins even has a better steal rate, and it's posting a steal rate that would have been the second best of Buddy Hield's entire career, which is when he was a freshman. Mullins 2 inches taller than Buddy Hield, equally rebounds to the rate of Buddy Hield. Like, that's one thing with Mullins. I think he's a sneaky good rebounder. Not to apply the sneaky XYZ guy traits to the white guy, but I think he is a pretty good rebounder, which, again, you would want that. He's 6'6". You would want someone who is 6'6" to be a good rebounder. I think this might be Buddy Hield, and I think that is kind of why I'm like, okay, Buddy Hield probably goes in the lottery in a redraft. And Braylon Mullins is going to be, and Buddy Hield won the lottery when he was in college. And Braylon Mullins is going to be, 20 and a half years old on draft night, if not younger. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I think this is a player I'm very excited about. If you just look at the college basketball analytics page as well, Again, there's a lot of green here, but the red is stuff like Bishalani is scoring, which is fast break points. UConn does not get out in the fast break. It's stuff like points in the paint. He's not getting in the paint at a high rate. That's okay. I think I can live with that. Fouls drawn, again, that's the one glaring part of his profile is like, is the physicality rate not good enough? He is fouling too much as well. That has gone down so far. I think he had one game, I believe it was Texas, where he just like got way too much into foul trouble. Only played like 17 minutes. I think against Illinois he picked up a couple fouls early as well, which that one totally gets the pass of first game back from injury. We're gonna give that to, especially something like a back injury. Again, the shooting chart just in general, there's a lot of red here. Like he's just putting the ball in the hole at a really really good rate. Again, even at the rim. Not getting to the rim or paint a whole lot, but is taking like a large volume of above the threes and is shooting them at 40%. Like this is, we'll watch the tape. This is probably one of the best shooters in the country, if not the single best shooter in the country, just in terms of his ability to put the ball in the hole from beyond the arc. He's an incredibly quick trigger. Overall, his shooting profile is like prolific. It is impossible for me to stress how good this shooting profile is. Let's get into the tape because I thought this game was really, really good. DePaul this year, again, not great. Like, it is DePaul basketball, but I do think Chris Holtmann is a good coach. This is a defensive scheme that does tend to limit rim attempts. I don't know what the numbers are this year at DePaul, to be entirely honest, but throughout his time at Ohio State and previous stops before that, was generally quite good at limiting rim attempts, and I think does have, like, a very buried in defensive philosophy. So I think you're going to see some defensive mistakes here from them that I'm going to attribute more to Mullins than I would, playing against a low major program. So I want to get that out of the way. I know DePaul can sometimes get, some slander. I want to say I think they're a pretty solid basketball team. Not a tournament team by any means, but not like the pathetic bottom feeders of the Big East they were 3 or 4 years ago. First play of Mullins here. We are 1 minute into the first half. Caravan's just going through the inlet past Terrace Reed. Mullins here, you're looking for 24 in white. Just look for the white kid with the little, like, it's almost like the white guy haircut, to be entirely honest. He's going to be here in the corner. Silas DeMary is here on the wing, and I believe it's a solo ball. This will be solo ball here on this other wing. UConn loves to go to Terrace Reed post-ups very early in the game, kind of get him working. I think Terrace has been phenomenal this year. Like, I would absolutely draft Terrace Reed in the top 40, give him a guaranteed deal. One of the best work rates in the country. But before I spend too much time on him, he's going to start post-up. DeMary's going to come here instead of ball screen. You can see McNeely. Wow, UConn. You can see Mullins flare a little bit up above the break. He's going to catch the ball. Watch how fast this closeout comes. This closeout comes so fast from this guy here, number 4. Actually, it'll be from 1 here. Like, he knows the scout. He knows what it is. He even does a good job at, like, getting back in a stance and sitting. But Mullins recognizes, like, I need to drive here. He's going to see this help defender and just take the floater. Like, he makes it. It doesn't look like the sexiest, to be entirely frank. But I like the touch. I honestly think he could have got a foul call here if we look at it. Kind of watch it. I think there could have been a foul here. Like, number 2 is kind of just grabbing him in the chest a little bit. Overall, I think that's a good way to get yourself scoring. I like that he's attacking the paint early. A lot of times these shooters look to shoot first and establish the paint second. I think Mullins going to the paint early shows that he doesn't kind of have a mentality in terms of doing one thing before the other. He just always takes some good shots. In general, his good shots are going to be 3s more often than they will be 2s. But after that, it's going to be just great ball movement from UConn. And they're going to find Mullins in the corner for a 3. Shout out Caravan. This is a good pass by Caravan. I've been quite impressed with him more than I have in the past recently. And he's going to hit an and 1 3. Again, this closeout comes incredibly quick. He's able to take it in the guy's face. If you just look at the shot aesthetically, this is a really pretty shot. The release is kind of funky. Like, it almost looks overly robotic. But he's kind of just a generational shooter, if we're being entirely honest. I don't really care. But there's good arc on this ball. The trajectory with his ball is just always pretty. Like, his makes are some of the prettiest makes you ever see. He's very good at getting into the squared base. Like, we'll see a couple attempts later. I even pulled a miss for this case. His ability to square and take a shot is so fast. It is unbelievably fast. And he's going to hit this and 1 3 as I'm drilling the free throw. That's just a great momentum swing early in the game. A couple possessions later, this is going to be Mullins' first defensive rep we'll take a look at. He's going to be down here guarding the corner man. He's going to rise up, and I believe he's just going to sit here on the ball, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's going to fight over the screen. He's going to get back and recover. This is a great rep. This is a great rep at a Braylon Mullins. If you look kind of a little bit more passive around the screen, UConn scheme does tend to be okay with letting guys go baseline, which again tends to be pretty normal across college basketball. So you can see him take it a little bit more passively and kind of recovers when he needs to cut off that angle straight to the rim, and then just does a great job of getting his hand on the ball. Like, this is a borderline block shot. I don't think it gets called as one, but to me this is very close to like some sort of stock, whether it be a steal or a block. That's just awesome. Like, this is, to me, what's really good about his defense is his technique is really, really impressive. Again, athletically, he's not going to wow, but generally, just like looking at his body mechanics, is not too high hipped. Does have, I think, like okay length. I think will probably come in at like +2, +3. So again, 6'8" to 6'9" wingspan. And when you have this good of hand activity and this good of ability of technique to slide your feet, he never gets stood up by anybody, or stood up, excuse me. You tend to just be a good defender at the NBA level, in terms of maybe you'll get hunted in like the highest level. You know, like the prime James Hardens, the Jason Tatums will drag you up for an isolation, stuff like that. I don't think he can get hunted to the point where you can't have him on the floor. And I think the off-ball screen navigation and some of the out-ball defense, I think this game was one of the games where this was less the case, just because he was guarding more on the ball than he had been in previous games. But I think that kind of stuff is good as well. A couple plays later, you'll see Mullins make a closeout there. And very standard defensive rep. I didn't even clip it out like meaningfully on purpose, because the guy just takes a dub, pull up 3 late in the shot clock. You're going to see him leak out here, and I believe this is one of his worst offensive plays. Yeah, he's going to rampage this catch here, and he kind of struggles with the physicality. This is the kind of stuff that I don't love to see. And again, we're honest here with the film and the stats when that is the case. This is one of those reps that I don't love. Kind of just buries his head down and doesn't get like any meaningful bend like in his lower half. If you look at him here, he's kind of just hunched over while he's driving, instead of like getting truly in a stance and driving through this dude. Like, this dude number 2, like, I believe he's like a junior, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember his name, which I feel horrible about. I should have remembered it before, because he's not on like all game. He's not like super strong, but he's not like weak. Again, like, he's an older player as opposed to Mullins. I still feel like Mullins has enough, like, you know, like power and force off of this rampage that if he's lower in his stance, should be able to drive the dude off the line and have a layup. And he's going to miss the rim attempt there. Again, there's one of his 13 rim attempts of the season, but I believe that's his only true rim attempt of the game. Or he's one more, if I'm not mistaken, but that would be assisted. Now, I believe that was the end of his first stint. Yeah, we're going to come in here. Past the under 8, I believe Mullins checks back into the game. He checks it right out of the game almost immediately after this on a dead ball, which has been his pretty standard rotation since he's been fully back from injury in like off the early minutes restriction I believe he was on. I believe this is a great closeout from him. He's able to recognize the high guy very early and kind of just slide, play really good defense. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I just really like with him. I think defensively the technique's really good. If you just kind of watch the closeout technique, he puts that front foot very high to basically just force this guy baseline. And I would assume he knows that there's no corner shooter right now, so he's not going to get killed by same side to help from, I believe this is Jaden Ross, if there was a guy there. And he can kind of just sit and play good defense. And I think that's what's really good about Mullins. It's the fact that he can kind of just sit and be in the right place at the right time and play pretty solid on the ball defense, albeit not elite, while returning good offensive value. About a minute and a half later, he's going to be picking up the point guard here on the ball. And he's going to fight over the screen. He's going to get a second one. And again, this is just really good defensive technique. This is another one, like, first screen does get clipped a little bit, does get behind. Fortunately, I think Terrace Reed does a fantastic job at showing and recovering here. Terrace is awesome. I love Terrace so much. But this second screen, it might as well not be there, the ability to get around it. They do leave the screen a little bit early, but just the fact to me that he's able to then get back in front of the ball, when I think on a lot of better players, to be fair, this might be a rim attempt, but Terrace Reed is there enough to I think it's a good rep. I don't know why 35's not rolling. Whatever, dude. But but I think generally this is a good defensive rep from Braylon Mullins, albeit not against the greatest on-ball players. About a minute later, I believe. No, this is like the next possession down. Mullins is going to kick the ball to Silas DeBerry, and I believe he gets to do a little two-man here with Terrace Reed. Yeah, they're going to try to, but this is one that I clipped out because the trigger is just ridiculous. Look how fast he gets the shot off. That's unreal. That looks like a good shot. Like, that's a good miss. It's front of the rim, like a straight trajectory on the ball. He just leaves it a little bit short. You know, I'll show it one more time. It's just an incredibly fast trigger over a good closeout. Like, that's how good of a shooter this kid is. Now into the first half. He's going to be here on the wing. UConn's getting into a post set. Terrace, you care about, dude. We're blowing that. But this is insane gravity. And this is why I think this kid is special. Is at the age of 19, playing in a high major conference, he already has this level of gravity. Again, I said earlier that I think Holtman teams tend to be very good defensively coached squads. And when you have this level of defensive gravity, or offensive gravity as an off-the-ball shooter, again, this is like 27 feet, if not more. And dudes are just like, we can't let this guy get loose. Then there are multiple reps like this across multiple games. It's generally he gets about one of these a game, where dudes just totally blow the coverage because his gravity is what it is. And that's the kind of stuff that when I'm scouting for these movement shooters, that is arguably the most important thing. It's not like can you survive in defense. It's not do you add ancillary passing, which I think Mullins also does both of those. It's just do teams respect you in this way? And Mullins is already getting this kind of respect like 11 games into his college career. Next possession down, he's going to kind of walk into a steal there. He didn't really do anything for it. And it's a pretty good layup in transition. I think arguably could have been a foul as well. Yeah, I ended up getting the foul call. I'm going to artificially boost that free throw rate. This is a whole possession that artificially boosts a whole lot, but I just figured I'd include it as I think the finishing process is solid. It's like a little wonky to be like fair, but does show like needed physicality in terms of just like giving that little stiff arm. Generally good stuff. Into the second half here, 3 minutes in, a little quiet first 3 minutes from Mullins, but I think if I remember correctly, this is one of his best defensive reps of the entire season. This is just great on the ball defense. And Terrace ended up a little late to the roll, but Silverball did a great job tagging. Switches on the screen, is able to sit there, just look at him move his feet. Like, that's good defensive technique. That's good defensive footwork. I know he's not an elite athlete, doesn't have elite length, doesn't have, like, insane stride length. That's really good defensive technique. Like, he is just always balanced when he's sliding his feet. He's able to handle the contact, does get pushed back, like, a little bit, but, like, meaning it doesn't really matter because the offensive player's back is turned. He's kind of just able to sit and guard people, and then he's over the second screen. When I think Terrace thought it would be a switch, which it's like, no, you're with the big, Terrace. Like, stay with the big. But, like, is able to recover. I think that's really, really good defensive rep. Again, like, we'll just watch it one more time in full. Like, this is good stuff. That's empty side. Like, he has no help, and he's basically just sitting and guarding and taking away the empty side. About 30 seconds later, it's going to be another good defensive rep. I believe this one he gets an on-ball steal. Yeah, that's just great hand activity. And then the hustle, again, like, white guy trope. But is able to just, like, have good hand activity. I think this is a kid with really good hand-eye coordination, which is, I think, something that makes, like, a Reed Shepherd a good defender. I don't think it's anywhere to the level of Reed Shepherd's hand-eye coordination. His might legitimately be some of the best I've ever seen. But gets into the defender meaningfully there, like, does get away with a little bit of a hand check, but they're not trying to go anywhere, so that's just not going to really get called. And then able to handle, like, kind of the pseudo rejection on the screen and just get in the rolling lane. I don't think that's a great offensive possession from DePaul for what it's worth, but I think Mullins is hounding him, and the fact that he's able to save the ball is also just, like, pretty good. So, again, very, very good rep. I think those are probably his two best defensive reps of the entire game, and this is where he starts to get hot on the offensive end. He's only got 7 points at this point. I believe he finishes with 16, but it's a louder back 9 than it is the front 7. Obviously, you just have the and 1 3 and then the and 1 layup. These are going to be some good offensive reps after this. Now Ryba's in the game, which I want to say, Ryba's awesome. I would draft Ryba this year as well. I think this UConn team is probably going to walk to a national championship. Maybe not probably. They would be my pick to walk to a national championship at this point because I think they have so many different looks they can throw at people, and I think Ryba's a huge part of that. But this is going to be a great back cut out of Mullins. Just using that gravity and just goodbye. And this is another thing I love about his offensive game. Kind of has this floater to go to. It's a less of an option... English, wow. Less of an option for him to use on the ball as it is a lot of these off-ball cuts, but won a great pass from Ryba. That's what we love so much about him. But he's going to be so good at some point, if not already. I mean, he already is so good for UConn, but he might be one of the best bigs in the country at some point. But Mullins just is able to recognize that, you know, on-the-ball gravity he has, or off-the-ball gravity, excuse me. I think what's most exciting is the moment Ryba turns his head, that's when he starts to cut. And that's just generally good offensive IQ. So another good rep out of him there on the offensive end, showing more things he can do other than the shot. This one he's going to be in the corner. They're going to run him off of a basic screening action. I clipped this out despite it being a foul, just because I think it shows the panic that people have when it's showing more of that gravity. When he gets around the screen, like, they just grab him. And I also think he does an excellent job. Again, it gets called off here because of the foul, and just kind of getting downhill out of this rep. Like, he wanted to get to the rim here. If you look at it, this foot is planted. He's going downhill. He's going downhill. Like, he's going to get into a two-man action with Riley here. And, like, whether it be throw the lob, throw the bounce pass, take the layup, whatever. Like, he wanted to get downhill. Again, it shows to me that he's not a one-dimensional player. And then just the fact that you're drawing off the ball, grabbing fouls, you're one of the best shooters in the country, if not the outright best. I thought this was probably his best offensive play of the whole game. I might have to clip this out from the highlights on YouTube because Furters and YouTube TV died during this one. But Ribe is going to be here top of the key, just kind of holding the ball the way he does. They're going to run Mullins off of a ball screen. Pretty good screen from Caravan. Shout out. He's going to fake the shot, draw the jump, kind of put the defender in jail. Great bounce pass. Great bounce pass. And this is the ancillary stuff that you need from movement shooters. Like, if you look at late career JJ Redick with the 76ers, they loved to run him off of that, like, chase action where they'd pitch it to Embiid and then he would immediately chase the ball. And he, late in that career, got so good at throwing this bounce pass. And it's just free points. When you have elite play finishers at the big spot who are able to quickly catch the ball, take that one dribble, and finish, this is free points. Because the movement shooter is always going to draw this big to sit in the pocket because they have to step up a little bit to take away the three if this dude totally dies. But if it's a play like this where he doesn't totally die and can maybe get a side contest off, you have to take away this jump shot in some capacity. Maybe you can live with it, but again, we've established Braylon Mullins is a really, really good mid-range shooter. We're fine with this shot. So if the big steps up whatsoever, this is a free bucket. So again, the fact that he has these kind of off-ball to on-the-ball passing traits shows me that this is someone who I think can be very, very good at the next level. I believe, like, next possession down. Minute and a half now down. And they're going to run off a flare set. He's going to instantly reflip the screen. Flips it once again, and he tries to snake it here, and he just gets fouled. Like, 35 is just in his feet. Like, badly here. Just straight trips him. But Braylon Mullins tried to split the screen. Let's monitor this the rest of the season. Again, I don't think this means anything today. But the fact that he wanted to split the screen, tried to split the screen. He also just kind of looks comfortable dribbling the ball. The handle does not look wonky to me, whereas, like, McNeely's kind of looked wonky at times. Other guys like that, like Jordan Hawkins, really couldn't handle. But, yeah, we go into a flare, and you instantly want to turn it into an on-the-ball rep. I like that. I like that quite a bit. To me, if, like, he snakes the screen, let's say he doesn't get tripped up here. 35's like a quarter of a step back. He's throwing this pass, right? We just saw him do it. We just saw him throw this pass. And if he doesn't throw this pass, it's, does this guy step in? This guy slides. Does he throw this pass? I feel like he probably does. To me, there's enough priors on the tape that he probably throws this pass. If this guy slides, he throws this one. Again, doesn't mean anything. Like, this doesn't show up on the stat sheet. I think it's good stuff. He's just going to rise up for a three. Or, no, they're not actually. They're just going to leave him. I call this out. He gets fouled because the closeout comes so fast. They just don't know what to do. Like, they just grab him. That's how good of a shooter this kid is. Like, he's just... They know. Oh, we gotta run up. They panic. They grab him. Now, 9 minutes ago, UConn really starts to pull away at this point. Like, this... I think they put the backups in with, like, 2 minutes ago. Like, the backups. This is a block that I don't think he got a block for in the stat sheet. Like, legitimately did not get a block whatsoever. But just kind of picks up in transition and blocks the shot. Sure, dude. You got it. Like, we'd love that. Again, this is just more of the defensive playmaking that I think he's really going to show at future levels. And I really love that in him. About 2 minutes after that, I think this is really good transition help. Yeah. This is just good instincts. Again, this shows some instincts he has. He's kind of not guarding anybody. There's a guy here, but, like, Terrace is back and can show. Solo ball can come back and can show. So he just goes, I'm going to go take away the layup. And he does. This isn't even, like, a fully, like, blocked shot. I think you could argue, like, this might be a foul. I would argue it'd be a bad call if it is a foul. But kind of just goes in and is like, yeah, I'm going to go make an impact. I'm going to go take away the easy shot. And he does. They end up securing the rebound, and then he leaks out. But I believe this is this next possession down. Right after that, Caravan's coming up for their kind of high-low action. Just kick it to him. He's open. It's money. Defender leaves for a moment, and he knows to rise up. That's shooter IQ. It's kind of stuff big-time shooters do. They know. Guy left me. I'm going to rise. Rises to space. Quickly squares. Off the hop. Got it. He's going to switch on the ball here. Almost gets a steal here. Like, defender, offensive player kind of dribbles into his feet, but he's kind of so active and in his grill without fouling that I'm going to give it to you. Does mess up on the recovery. You'd think, oh, gives him a 5v4. Watch this. I'm there. I'm going to make a great outlet, so the ball's going to finish. That kind of stuff. This defensive impact that, like, NBA coaches love. This is the kind of stuff that gets you on the floor as well early in your career. I think a lot of times with players of this archetype, if they can't get on the floor defensively, they never develop enough offensively to ever warrant getting on the floor to the point where they end up becoming, like, lost development causes. This kind of stuff gets you on the floor early, which means I think Mullins is going to end up being successful because he's probably going to get reps in the NBA to get better at the things that he might not be good at. Or he's going to sharpen his skills that are already good. Just love the stuff out of him. Like, he knows where to be. Yep, ball's mine. Instant outlet. One-handed outlet, too, for what it's worth. But I don't think he'll be throwing a whole lot of those passes all year. Next position down offensively for UConn. He's going to set a ball screen. Instantly get a cut inside. They're going to run him off of a flare here into this kind of like almost designed three-man action. I think this is designed. And I believe this is the last play. Yeah, this is the last play he has all game. He kind of comes out of the game and then UConn puts the backups in instead of putting it back into the game. Look at the gravity. Look at this. This is a 2-on-1. So he's going to throw the pass to the wide open shooter. Got it. Yeah, not a very difficult read. I'm not going to act like this is a difficult read whatsoever. But he's drawing multiple bodies at all times. At all times. Multiple bodies are on him. And I think that's what makes this kid so good. That was it as far as the film. Again, I thought I played a really good game. Just going back to the profile, even if you just look at like the BPM for this game. Put up a 21 BPM in this game. And game BPM is just like flawed as shit. Ended up getting 2 blocks, 3 steals on the stat line. 7 rebounds total. Like, that's impact. This is a really impactful game. I thought he played really, really well. I'm very excited for Braylon Mullins the rest of the season. I'm very, very excited for UConn, if you can't tell, after the video. I thought preseason, I picked them to win the Natty. Kind of still there. I know Michigan lost yesterday. I think Michigan would probably be the other team that, I'd have to kind of throw a bone to, them and Iowa State. Shout out undefeated Nebraska, though. I'm having the time of my life out here. But Braylon Mullins, I think he's really good. I think the film says so. I think he defies a lot of the analytics that tend to not love this player archetype. So I think he's a really good player. Again, you've been watching Logan EV Scout Room, so be sure to follow the Substack. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe on the YouTube. If you're watching on the Substack, follow the YouTube. Yeah, do both if you haven't already. If you're on Twitter, at LoganROA_. Follow the pod, at HTG Pod. A lot of good stuff coming out there. We should have a guest episode with our boy Cameron King coming on this next week. Just got to organize a time for that. Apologize that these have not been coming out more this season. Got very busy with school this last semester. Locked in for one of the best academic semesters of my career. So hopefully these should be coming more frequently soon. I hope I swayed you on Braylon Mullins if you were not already there. But if not, I think he'll probably sway some people in time. I think he's a really good basketball player. And I think a lot of things are going to end up showing that. So as always, happy scouting.